Right, well thank you. Welcome to this Community Outcomes meeting, which is a regular meeting of holding to account in public, and obviously we've got a few agenda items, but I know that because of busy diaries that we want to change a couple of the items on the running order. So before we get to that, we do have the notes of the last meeting that have been published and circulated. So there are quite a few issues in there with regards to hate crime that we will come back to in the course of the meeting. So and I know Angela Williams, the Assistant Chief Constable, will be attending later to address some of those, so that's fine. Yeah. We'll pick those up then. Are there any matters arising from yourselves regarding those notes?
No, we picked up the actions from last time, Commissioner, and they'll come in the future reports.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually two that are now completed. On page 2, the very top one about the Neighbourhood Watch scheme, we gave you an update at the last bilateral on the 5th of July, and similarly the very last action about informing you of the outcome of the media review regarding the flooding. We shared with you the Local Resilience Forum debrief, and again that was at the bilateral on the 5th of July.
Yeah. And I think prior to the meeting we've gone through that list, and actually there's some on there that probably need removing because we've dealt with them previously. So if that could be properly updated, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so that's the notes and the matters arising. Just discuss the actions. I don't have any urgent items to raise at this point.
No, we haven't got any either for this meeting.
Okay, well, in relation to announcements, as I've already intimated, the hate crime update is something I absolutely do want to follow up on, given the issues and the impacts that we know following the referendum vote. And you and I and other colleagues in West Yorkshire Police have made statements, but I think we need to explore the work and update later on in the meeting when Angela Williams arrives, so we will do that. Just on a general point, I suppose, following the Brexit vote, clearly from a financial point of view, we have had some conversations generally regarding what it might mean for funding in public services, and obviously for us the police service, and it's just something we are keeping an eye on, because as you know, you and I did attend a meeting in London more than a week ago where we had the permanent secretary attend from the Home Office, and Sarah Thornton, the president of the Association of Chiefs, and obviously there was some discussion around hoping that the budgets that have been set out in the previous budget, we hope are going to be remain largely intact, but of course given the fast-moving events in Parliament and what's going on at the moment, clearly there is there's almost certainly will be a new budget announced in the autumn, given that Theresa May will be taking over as Prime Minister with a new cabinet, and in one sense, given that it is Theresa May who's been the Home Secretary, as we know, for the last 6 years, one would hope that she will recognise the importance of maintaining the settlement that was announced in the last budget. But of course, I think both of us will obviously be watching that very closely and making any representations that we need to.
I think it's fair to say, Commissioner, I share your concerns, because we have now effectively started planning with the current settlement, which has obviously also included a significant amount of recruitment, and actually to suddenly change the position in the autumn for us would be extremely problematic. It would be extremely problematic.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the big message from me, and I'm sure other police and crime commissioners, will be that we will be urging as much stability as possible with announcements that have already been made, notwithstanding that, you know, there is obviously a huge job of work to be done in renegotiating the relationship with the European Union, but clearly from our perspective we would want to at least maintain the settlement that we have at the moment, but I think it's right that we just refer to that and make sure that we are monitoring that very closely.
I think it's also linked, Commissioner, to community confidence, and we've raised expectations in the communities in West Yorkshire around changing our workforce profile, particularly around diversity, and I would have some very genuine concerns that if we did have to change our position during the course of the year, we'd then have an awful lot of disappointed people to have to manage.
Absolutely, yes, and as you know, we did speak to a number of West Yorkshire MPs ahead of the budget last year, and I think those conversations were productive in the views that were put to them, and it may be, depending on, you know, how things go, that we do a similar meeting with West Yorkshire MPs and provide a briefing if it's looking like there are negative changes to our overall position, but obviously it remains to be seen. The thing I wanted to mention, just going back to the beginning of the meeting, was an update around the hate crime position, because as we alluded to earlier in the meeting, obviously following the referendum vote, we know about the national reports and the anecdotal instances where you know, people have contacted us, and you will have heard, I'm sure, around instances of hate crime or potential hate crime incidents being committed against some of our community members, which of course none of us would want to happen, or indeed we don't tolerate in any shape or form. So perhaps if I could just ask you, Angela, as the Assistant Chief Constable with the Portfolio Lead, to update us from a West Yorkshire police position, and of course I've been working closely with you as well around putting out key messages, but over to you.
Yes, I think it's true to say we did have a slight rise after the Brexit date and the announcement then, but not in line with what we've seen nationally. So in some media outlets we've seen nationally sort of 300–400% rises. We didn't see that within West Yorkshire at all. And if I tell you a daily average for hate incidents and crime in West Yorkshire is around 13 incidents a day, that was for the last 12 months, and that's across the full 5 districts. It did rise the following week to about 19 or 20 a day, so it did rise, but now the levels have gone back down. I'll just pass you some data if I can, Commissioner, which basically we're looking at it on a daily basis now. So what we're actually doing is we're tracking on a daily basis how many incidents and crimes we have that are of a hate nature. And you can see on that data that I've been able to supply you there, it does talk about the daily average for 15–16 being 13.5 a day. That rose to 14, just over 14 in 16–17, and that's the way that we've been going this year. And then you can see that little spike on the 4th of July at 17, but it's now started to tail off. And the last day's data I've got in front of me is the 10th, where we had eight incidents there. And then in the bottom chart, it gives a breakdown as to which area of West Yorkshire it's happened in, whether that's Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees, Leeds or Wakefield, which I think is quite useful for us to track, is it in a particular community or not. What I will say is we have worked quite hard in relation to hate crime incidents and hate crime recording over the last 12 months. And I know you've been very active yourself in our Hate Hurts campaign, where I've done a lot of media, as of yourself, to raise awareness. And when you compare the last 12 months of data, so we're looking over a bigger period, when you consider the last 12 months of data versus 12 months before, we did see some quite big increases of 70% in some areas, but we actually feel that's a real plus factor because we're out there in the communities telling members of the public about what's a hate incident and what's a hate crime. And in really basic terms, hate incident or a hate crime is where the victim or a witness or anybody perceives that it's driven by hate tendencies. That's what a crime is of that nature. If I could just also point out that as of Monday, as of yesterday, now incidents coming in are recorded at source. So do you know, like now we record serious sexual offences and domestic violence offences coming at source by the Customer Contact Centre. That as of yesterday includes hate crime as well, which will better allow us to understand how compliant we are. We're doing some work around CDI to make sure that our crime recording is genuine and reflects reality. And the districts have recently embarked on some scrutiny panels where they look at certain hate crimes to ensure that they're being dealt with appropriately.
Thanks for that, and I think, as you know, I like you, have done some media messages around this. I did appear on Calendar to do a short interview as part of a report they were doing. We've been contacted through the office, through telephone messages, through email correspondence, and indeed one of our local MPs, Paula Sheriff MP for Dewsbury, particularly in the light of the very tragic murder of Joe Cox MP, wanting to offer reassurance and follow up around some of the legacy work that Joe was involved in. So I will be talking to yourself and Dee regarding a potential meeting that some of the West Yorkshire MPs might want to arrange, which, you know, I'm supportive of, but, you know, clearly it needs a bit of thinking around how we do that. And, you know, other organisations like Just West Yorkshire, for example, have contacted me, and I'm in the process of putting together a response to them regarding a number of questions that they've raised. But this latest information will be very helpful in providing some of that context as well.
It's also worth just mentioning the work you've done around contacting the third-party hate centres.
What we've got across West Yorkshire, we've got ourselves into quite a good position nationally around third-party reporting centres, and we've got 142 throughout the districts. So if people were to ask what sort of places are those in, they're in citizens' advice offices, colleges, universities, library, community centres, in communities housing, Pennine housing in Calderdale. So various outlets where public sector workers work, that they can take these reports. So, because we understand people might not want to come forward to the police, they might want to go to a third-party centre. And what we did on Friday, because I was a little worried that there was a lag of offences coming through and they'd be in the system somewhere, and I would be reporting data that was not bang up to date. One of my colleagues, Karen Stratz, who you've met, did a ring round of all the centres personally to say, have you got anything that's on its way through to us that's not landed yet? And that was no, so there's nothing in the system waiting to come through. However, the staff working at the centres did say that there'd been some more chatter and people coming in to talk about, they'd heard via a friend of a friend, for example, people had made comments around, you need to go home, or comments like that, but that hadn't actually formalised into an incident or a crime report. And then over the weekend, I did some work on the West Yorkshire Police website to make sure all the links are up and running with Tell Mama, with Stop Hate UK, and they're all live and able to be accessed, because I had a go myself.
No, that's good, because clearly when we are going out through the Hate Hurts campaign, which has been running for some time, as we know, to encourage people to come forward, then the systems and the procedures have to be in place then to support people who are, you know, in a vulnerable situation. And we do know, following the last minutes of the last meeting, which John answered quite a few questions, that 80% of all incidents are around race.
They are.
Which is something that was reported at that last meeting. Also, I think it's worth reminding ourselves at the last meeting that I think each of the policing districts are also looking at setting up separate youth hate crime scrutiny panels, which I think will be very helpful, because younger people particularly feel you know, a bit uncertain following the Brexit vote, because I think there is evidence around younger people who probably been more inclined to vote to stay in the European Union. So that's a positive development. Obviously, please hear about the contact with the third-party reporting centres, because we know that this is an issue that has been around for a while, but of course for third-party reporting centres to continue, they do constantly need to be refreshed, people to have the proper training, and for proper awareness of the centres where they exist to offer that service. So it's not something that can just be, well, we've ticked that box this year and we'll revisit it in 12 months' time. So the whole issue really has sort of highlighted the need to revisit that. So you know, I welcome the contact that's been made. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the fact that there is this national scrutiny where forces return every day where we are in relation to hate incidents and hate crime demonstrates the national level of interest, and I think this should be very reassuring to the public that we take this incredibly seriously. I do worry about the potential, because there's always going to be potential for underreporting, but I think we've been trying really hard here in West Yorkshire to reach into communities and encourage people to want to come forward. Hence we saw the significant increase in reporting during the last 12 months, and would encourage people again to come forward, because we cannot deal with issues on their behalf unless we're made aware of them.
Absolutely, and I know prompt action was taken by the police here in West Yorkshire around an incident in Armley. I think it was.
It was at the shopping centre.
Yes.
It was a shopkeeper that became unwell after a robbery. Yes.
So absolutely, we you know, we say what we mean in terms of non-toleration, and reports will be taken seriously, and I think we've all got a responsibility to follow that through. So thanks for that update, but clearly there'll be more work to do in the coming weeks and months and years ahead. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that update. Okay.